What's going on, Tamers? It's me, rookie level Mustache Mon.
You can kind of see him right there a little bit. Yeah, we'll get there. Don't worry.
Mega level, here we come. Anyway, today we're taking a look at the Week 2 Japanese BT10 and EX3 meta. If you haven't seen the first video covering Week 1 for EX3's release, then I definitely recommend you go check that out. I'll put up a link somewhere or up here. But anyway, I think there's a lot to be gleaned from the meta Week 1 to Week 2, and we'll talk a little bit about some of the major takeaways, and then look at a couple of decks that have topped over the course of the week. So actually taking a look at some of the tournament results, I think one of the biggest takeaways comparing this week to last week is that Crossheart is dominating the meta. The rich only got richer, it seems. They have over 16 wins, with the second closest deck being Bloomlord with just over half of that at 9. Something interesting that I noted is that while the Digimon for that deck are pretty much set in stone, it feels like the Tamers are not. I've seen people running everything from the Security Attack plus Tai to the Security Search TK, things like Tai and Sora, the red-yellow Tamer. I've seen Christopher in there, the blue Digicross Tamer as well. The deck really does feel unsettled, or it's just very flexible depending on what you want to run as far as Tamers are concerned. I've also seen people run anywhere from 2 to 4 copies of Sunrise Buster. In my opinion, I would love to see 4 in every deck, but I think that some people are trying to make room for some other options as well. Taking a look at the decks below that, Bloomlord and Lynx Dragon definitely setting themselves apart from the rest of the crowd. Both very powerful decks, very quick. Bloomlord being able to just pop up and sprout tons and tons of Digimon within 3 turns, and the Lynx Dragon being able to control the board incredibly well with their level 6s. Another interesting thing that came up this week, I think, is that we've seen the rise of D-Brigade. While a lot of these decks are trying to set up, D-Brigade's still very aggro heavy, will just kill you before you can do that. The new support from the level 6 Dark Dramon, the Tank Dramon, the Seals Dramon, as well as the new Command Dramon are all fantastic. After looking at the results, it seems like the biggest point of contention for the deck is actually going to be around the level 4 slots. Some people feel that the old level 4 Seals Dramon with blocker and then security attack minus on swing is not so great. You know, there are other options that you could run. I've seen everything from Nanimons to Grumblemons to Mechanorimons. I've even seen some decks run the upper half of Lynx Dragon, the black side, and find some success with that as well. As people really flesh out the options of the deck and then find the most optimal builds, I would imagine that we're going to see this deck rise to the status of Bloomlord and Lynx Dragon. We also see decks like Blue Flare and Examon still doing very, very well, and surprisingly, again for the second week in a row, Digimon has somehow come out of nowhere and taken more tournament wins than I really thought it would ever get. In last week's video, it really seemed like the level 6s in the deck were still being worked on. People were running things like the Megidoromon, we've seen different copies of Dukemon. I really feel like this week we've seen the Megidoromon get cut, and the Dukemon are here to stay. Another big change that's happened over the course of the week is that a lot of decks are actually cutting their copies of Kudamon in favor of more aggressive search strategies using cards like Red Memory Boost, and as a result of that, we see less copies of the level 4 Growlmon from the EX3 set that just released as well, just because if there's no Kudamon to sacrifice for the Security Attack Plus bonus, it doesn't really make much sense to actually run the Growlmon either. And then rounding out the bottom of the list, it feels like a lot of the decks that you would expect to see there. Chaos Dramon, Jesmon X as well. Kind of surprising to see that Imperial Dramon Red Purple is not doing so well. Maybe people just haven't found the most optimal builds. We'll have to take a look at that in upcoming weeks to find out. And then taking a look at the bottom list, you can see some very spicy deck picks there. Hexablow coming back for whatever reason. We see Justimon somehow topped. Beelstarmon refuses to die for some reason. And even Imperial Dramon Blue-Green made an appearance. Seems like in this meta, almost anything's still possible. Okay, so let's take a look at a couple of deck lists here that actually topped over the course of the week. The first one is going to be, in my opinion, the most tight version of Crossheart you're going to find out there. It's important to note that Keisan here, the guy who actually built this deck, was part of a team that won an 84-man team tournament. So his team, I think his teammates were running Bloomlord as well as Alphamon, but Crossheart here did a ton of work. And you can see the Tamer spread here is pretty wide. They've got 2 copies of the Security Attack plus 1 Tai. They've got 3 copies of the Tai and Sora. And in my opinion, if you're going to go with a base form for the Crossheart deck before you start messing around with some of the ratios and, you know, fine-tuning things to your liking, I think this is definitely the list that you're going to want to go for. 2 copies of Dexmon just as a counter strategy to other Crossheart decks, as well as other decks in the meta as a whole, is a really good pick as well. Another deck I want to highlight this week is actually Command Dramon. You can see here a lot of the new cards here in the Seals Dramon, the Tank Dramon, as well as the Dark Dodomon. This list is really interesting because it cuts the old Tank Dramon. It also has a couple of copies of a lot of those level 4s that I talked about before. We see the old Seals Dramon there. Mechanorimon is in the mix, as well as that single copy of Grumblemon, most likely for those final swings if you need them. Outside of that, it's got an interesting Chimeramon tech, which I guess kind of makes sense if you're going to run, you know, level 4 blocker that's not really doing much, can't really swing on the board. If you got 2 of them out in the field, you can Digicross them or DNA Digivolve them into Chimeramon, and then immediately go into a free cost, basically, Dark Dramon. It's basically going from level 4 to level 6 for 0 cost. Really interesting to see the 3 copies of Parabolic Junk make a return. I haven't seen this card in a long time, it feels like, but you know, really aggro deck like this can sometimes use that 2 memory, and if you're going to swing with a weak Command Digimon security, you know, it's almost always guaranteed to get popped by some security Digimon. Might as well just get the memory off it anyway. Another really interesting tech in this deck is the Hagudamon, being able to take advantage of the fact that a lot of the D-Brigade cards are cyborgs themselves, which means that you can toss them into the trash, get the D-Brigade Digimon in the trash that you need for the Dark Dramon later on, while at the same time being able to dig through your deck to find those level 5s that we talked about before. And the last deck list we're going to take a look at here is going to be Dukemon. Interesting to note that this deck exactly won 2 events piloted by the same guy, fellow who runs by the name Vana. And you can see that he, again, has cut the Kudamon package entirely in favor of 4 red memory boosts. Additionally, he's cut the Megadoramon in favor of a X-Antibody-centric strategy. You can see the 1 copy of X-Antibody option over there. You can see the 3 copies of the Dukemon X Antibody as well. And the level 4 Growlmons from the EX3 series are nowhere to be found again. Again, the level 4s and level 3s both have X Antibody, so it feels like we might see a shift toward X Antibody away from some of the newer red-purple stuff. He does keep the level 5 Megalo Growlmon, which is really nice, and then he uses that in tandem with the X Antibody Megalo Growlmon for some pretty powerful plays in the mid-game. And we'll wrap up there with the Week 2 Japanese Meta report for the EX3 and BT10 series. Again, I'm still surprised that Dukemon is hanging in there. I'm kind of surprised also that Imperial Dramon is really not performing as well. Are there any decks that you guys think are underperforming or overperforming in the current meta? Let me know in the comments below. Anyway, I'm going to get out of here. Before you get out of here, do me a favor, hit the subscribe button and the thumbs up button, and I'll catch you in the next one. Take care, folks.